I talked about this briefly on my Tumblr, but I decided it might be worth it to make a longer video on the subject. Now, as always, here's a simple disclaimer. If you take any of this as me hating on Ethan, the original Village story, or as me saying this should have been canon, please refrain from commenting anything stupid. This is all meant to be said in good fun and my own way. I would have written the story of Village. You're allowed to disagree, but being a bigot or simply hateful in my comments will get said comment deleted. Anyway, on to the video. I do thoroughly enjoy the story and the plot of Village, but I also think Capcom fumbled hard with the way they wrote it. There were so many missed opportunities and various plot holes that made some of the things said or done very questionable, I suppose. And I understand that the Resident Evil games are not known for the realism, but at the very least, they could have implemented some realism. Like, based on what we know of the lore and what we see in game, so many things only happen to further push Ethan's story, and it was incredibly infuriating at times. Not to mention the various bits of information either blatantly brought up or implied that were never mentioned again. Let's start off with the basics. Mia is my protagonist. I don't care if you don't like her or if you think she should have died in Biohazard. She's an incredibly important part of the story, and her being the protagonist instead of sidelined again would have made much more sense with Village's story. Think of her history with the connections, her knowledge of the mold, her past with Mother Miranda. Ugh, the intrigue. Rose still exists, though I would probably make it a little more obvious that Mia and Ethan were having some problems prior to the events of the game. Little spats here and there, struggles of returning to a sense of normalcy with nightmares and PTSD on both ends. You get the idea. I also wouldn't make it to where it seems as though Mia is the only one causing problems in the relationship like Capcom seemed intent on doing. I thought it was obvious they were both causing problems. But oh well. I would probably have the game start off with a similar story like we heard in the original game, obviously hinting at the Lords and Miranda. This little book reading would cause yet another argument between Mia and Ethan, causing the former to take Rose outside for a little walk to clear her head and figure out what she needs to do going forward. She talks with her infant daughter and tries to pretend like everything is perfectly fine, even if, deep down, she knows the incident in Louisiana has ruptured them completely. She knows what she has to do, but she still loves Ethan and wants to make it work. They just have different ways of processing their trauma, and maybe neither feels heard by the other, which would put both of them at fault, you know? While she's outside pushing Rose around, or perhaps carrying her, she reaches a part of the surrounding forest she had never been to before. The sun is setting, and she knows she should turn back and just talk to Ethan. But before she can do much aside from turn her body around, she sees another figure standing nearby, quietly watching her. This person seems to be wearing a robe and hood made of feathers and, for only a moment, says nothing. Mia steps back and moves to protect Rose, and this is when the stranger speaks, sending a chill down her spine, and it's revealed to be Miranda herself. I am still debating this simply because the opening scene with Miranda pretending to be Mia and looking angry as she's shot was pretty funny. Maybe she had been pretending to be Ethan here and that's how she knew where Mia went. Anyway, I don't think Miranda would have any reason to hide her true form from Mia, considering their past with one another, and I can see her using this to her advantage to have Mia put her guard down. After all, during their time working together or doing more, I doubt Miranda would have been outwardly hostile and aggressive. And she did take care of Mia during the original events of Village. I'm not super clear on where to go from that point or what should be there, but I know for a fact I would not have had a Chris Redfield cameo in this game. His entire role was stupid to me, especially because of the suspicious circumstances of it and the fact this grown man couldn't tell someone that wasn't your wife. It was a cult leader pretending to be her. We need to get you and your daughter to safety, and I'll explain while we travel. How hard was that, Capcom? But I suppose that would have ruined the entire game, so they went with the dumber option. Anyway, the only thing I would have kept was that Chris did move them to Romania, but him doing so would have been hinted to be suspicious, something that was kind of mentioned in the Baker incident report. If I'm remembering correctly, it almost seemed as though he was using the winners as bait for Miranda, only for it to go way wrong. But don't quote me on that one. If I did make it to where Chris was known to be the one to move them, I would probably give Miranda a line hinting that she knew about his plans and acted on them before he could, or something. She's incredibly intelligent and resourceful after all. Back on topic, let's say Miranda gets Mia to let her guard down and attacks her from there. When she wakes up, she only has the moon's light to guide her. And Rose is, of course, missing. She's in a different part of the forest than she had been when she was attacked, and this is what leads her to the village, likely because part of Miranda wanted Mia to find her. She may have even implanted images in Mia's head to motivate her to get to the village quicker. I would keep the game during the night or early morning, mostly because of how terrifying that would be. I hated that village had more action than horror, considering Biohazard's vibe, but whatever. So, guided by the moon's light, Mia stumbles her way to the village, unsure of where she is or if she's even seeing anything correctly. She mentions that she thinks she's going back to her home to get Ethan and struggles with what she should tell him while she shivers and her teeth clack from the cold. But when she breaks through the tree line after hearing things around her, she realizes she is utterly lost. Also, imagine how cool it would have been to see the village from that little cliff, all illuminated by the moon's light. The reservoir, the castle, the factory in the distance. The layout of the village would have remained the same, but I would have made it a little bigger and made it look like it had more than 10 buildings total. I mean, how are we expected to believe there were more than 30 people living there at a time? An exaggeration, but you get my point, I hope. Doing so would help with the lore later that villagers were experimented on rather frequently by Miranda and the lords, and would have helped with the idea that some or many were taken by the Dimitrescus to be eaten. In Village, it didn't seem as though they would have been sustained enough to survive for over 60 years with what they had. But maybe Capcom didn't really think that part through. That's what I'm here for, kind of. Anyway, Mia realizes she's lost, and she is completely alone. She knows no one, and as she searches through a few buildings to look for people, she doesn't recognize any of the writings or the pictures of people. She has no idea where she is, and she doesn't even know if this is real or if she's still dreaming. Maybe it's a nightmare she'll wake up from soon enough, like what happens on nights she and Ethan argue. She searches for people and finds the man that gets attacked by lichens later, shaking and struggling to understand anything he's saying. He points the gun at her, realizes he doesn't recognize her, and offers it to her hurriedly as the lichens crowd his windows and bang on the walls. Mia has no idea what's going on, but given everything she's been through, it must be something horrible. And at least this man seems to know what's going on and can direct her. From here, I would have kept things pretty much the same, to a point. I wouldn't have made the massive lichen fight a thing, only because it was, overall, pretty pointless. But I would have made her struggle to fight off one and have a few more come because of the shots fired. All of this happens in the darkness of night, mind you. As her eyes struggle to adjust with every shot, she only sees the silver of the lichen's eyes and their faint outlines. She has no clue what these things are, but she does know she needs to get away from them. She runs and most likely manages to get to the chapel with the help of the hag, who is still Miranda but disguised, and she's given very little insight from there. The woman mentions the strange attack from the lichens and how Mother Miranda had always protected them up until this point, and she mentions the arrival of a strange child sometime before the sun had truly set. Mia questions what Miranda was doing in this village, what her role was, why she was conveniently in the forest when Rose was taken. But the hag has no answers for her and probably mentions she said too much in a mock, fearful tone. She then urges Mia to continue on, to search for the answers deeper in the village, as she has none. This would lead her to find Elena and the other villagers, but I wouldn't kill any of them just yet. They do fill her in a little on what's going on, likely with Elena acting as a sort of translator between Romanian and English. And Mia learns a bit more about the village and what's happened in the last few hours. Things were normal, she's told, until the bells in the castle rang loudly and the monsters appeared not much later. They had always been protected. Why now? Mia is gifted a heavier and warmer jacket, as she's now determined to find Rose first and maybe get answers from Miranda later on. At this point, she's not fully convinced Miranda would hurt her, considering their background, but she knows to keep on guard. After all, it does seem most likely her ex-co-worker was the one to take Rose from her, but it just doesn't make sense with what she knows. Maybe it was someone else tricking her into thinking it was Miranda. Maybe she'd finally lost her mind. Either way, she just knows she has to find Rose and get the hell out of there before trouble comes. As expected, it does. I would assume she's encouraged to find Donna Benavento first, considering the rumors about her and her friends. Based on what Mia had told them, the dollmaker seems to be the one that would have taken Rose, perhaps by sending Miranda out first. Again, remember that at this point, all the villagers have our rumors. They do not know Donna, nor do they know much, if anything, about her past. All they know is that her playmates do not come back from her estate and that several people have gone missing when they try to investigate. I would keep the Benavento estate pretty much the same, aside from getting rid of the giant fetus and making things just a tad bit scarier. I mean, imagine Mia going through it all with hallucinations following her every move, with her hearing Ethan call for her from several rooms over or hear Rose crying behind her. I imagine Donna would even use some visions of Miranda to lead her somewhere, considering that's one of the people she's hunting after. So, Mia goes through the estate, struggling with hallucinations and freaky shit going on. The power is cut when she's searching the basement, but instead of the giant fetus being there, this is where the first boss fight takes place. Nothing ever really happens, but Mia has to find a way through a pitch-black estate with a single flashlight, fighting through hallucinations, dealing with Ethan, Rose, the Baker incident, Evelyn, and even Miranda. She dies when she succumbs to a hallucination and believes one to be real, or something similar to that. But that would be accurately representing trauma, and we all know Capcom is not good with that. When she finally makes it back upstairs, panting and terrified, this is where the second boss fight is, eerily similar to what we had seen in the original game. Donna now knows what Mia is willing to do and go through, but as before, she cannot let her leave. The lights are flickering and Donna herself is almost vibrating around the edges of her form, and she forces Mia through literal hell to keep her inside. She sees Donna's mutated form in a hallucination, an amalgamation of strings, doll parts, and stretched skin on long bones. She must find her way through her traumatic hallucinations, forcing her to deal with what had happened to her. And this is where the player will be presented with a choice, albeit one they may not know they have. Kill Donna, or simply escape the hallucination. Doing the latter will not be easy, but it's possible, and it leaves Donna alive for later. Both choices will have consequences, and it's up to the player to figure out which is worth it. I haven't fully mapped out the consequences of both options, but I assume that leaving her alive would mean more hallucinations and more warnings for the other lords, as well as different dialogue with Miranda. Killing her probably results in being able to catch the other lords off guard, but Mia would be playing exactly into what Miranda wants her to do, and may end up causing a moral dilemma. I dunno. Mia eventually finds her way back to the village, exhausted and shaking from what she had seen, and she finds now that a few villagers from before are missing. Elena explains that they were found and defends Mia when another villager tries to accuse her of bringing the lichens to them, attempting to throw her out of the safe space. Once outside, and while listening to Elena argue with the few remaining villagers about leaving her to die, Mia hears someone approaching. It turns out to be Miranda circling around her on the snowy, muddy ground, fake pity as she talks, and maybe a little bit of flirting to make Mia feel more uneasy about the entire situation. This is also where she would mention Donna's death or survival, hinting that she's watching Mia's every move. It's not long before Miranda leaves, as she's shot at, cackling and disappearing in a flock of birds. She probably encourages Mia to go to Moreau next, mentioning the windmill and the dam, and Mia now really starts to question everything going on. From here, I wouldn't change much about Moreau's section, other than to add more enemies stalking Mia with their silver eyes glowing against the darkness of the night and growling or snarling. This would set an air of danger as she traverses the fishery, and shooting at the lichens where even the Varkalak also stalking her would have them attack her and make things worse. I would have some choices in this, you know, subtle ones, but they would be there. Mia would struggle and see the way Miranda treats Moreau and possibly her other children, and she would likely feel some sympathy for him as he laments about Rose's arrival and what it means for him. In the end, I think she would merely escape from a mutated Moreau and stumble back to the village with her clothing torn and maybe with some small acid burns on her skin, both from him and the masses blocking her in. I apologize if this isn't as detailed as you were expecting. Some things, I see no reason to change, aside from small details, and I would remake the game as I envisioned it if I could. Still, I hope you're getting my points throughout this. Remember that I am merely a silly YouTuber for fun, not a fully fledged game developer. After escaping Moreau and making it back to the village, Mia finds a handful of villagers trying to escape from several lichens hunting them down. As she arrives, gun aimed, she sees one of the lichens drag someone away as they scream for help, and here she is presented with another choice: help or run to safety. If she helps, the villagers will offer some assistance, like ammo, weapon upgrades, health, and food. If she leaves the village or defend for themselves and gets inside while they're dragged away, she receives cold shoulders and nothing to help her going forward. After this, and learning even more about what's going on and who's been lost, Mia must now continue her journey of finding her daughter. Despite likely Elena trying to convince her to stay where they know it's safe, she's refused, of course, and Mia now struggles to find where she should go next. As she carefully moves through the quiet, darkened village, trying her best not to alert any of the lingering lichens or the traps they've set, she finds herself confronted once more by an irritated Miranda. She's told she should have left things alone after Evelyn, that she should have stayed with her adoring husband and lived a normal life. Miranda is saying all of this to irritate Mia and get her angry, so she doesn't notice she's being led straight to Castle Dimitrescu, just where the former believes she will be rid of her. At this point, I feel like part of Miranda would struggle with how to deal with Mia. Does she kill her and be done with it? Is it the unfortunately human part of her that tells her she should allow Mia one last chance at survival? It's clear she's disappointed neither Donna nor Moreau could take Mia out. And while she's in the castle, Miranda likely uses this time to finish them off so the Megamycete has more bodies to help with the ritual. Remember that Mia still isn't 100% aware it was Miranda that still has Rose, and only thinks she may be an accomplice in all of this. Part of her wants to see the good in her old friend, but that feeling is waning with every step she takes. Anyway, that part isn't super clear to me. But now, Mia is stuck behind the massive iron gate of Castle Dimitrescu as Miranda locks it behind her, and the only way to go is forward. Gritting her teeth, she proceeds through the dark castle as she hears footsteps and what sounds like bugs buzzing, but she can never actually see anything. Again, it's nighttime or very early in the morning at this point in the game, so the castle is very dimly lit, and it's difficult to see past the occasional torches or her flashlight. She gets to the Hall of the Four and tries to push open the bronze door beneath the archway, only to hear giggling and the daughters now speaking in mocking tones to her. Instead of just standing there stupidly like Ethan did, Mia would try to get away from 3 humanoid swarms of bugs with what are very obviously weapons in their hands, even as they bite at her skin and try to block her vision. I feel like anyone's fight or flight would be activated upon first seeing the daughters appear out of bug swarms, and Mia already knows she's in danger while she's in the village. Her best attempt at surviving longer is running. She ends up cornered, as one would expect at this point, and is dragged back to Lady Dimitrescu, similarly to how Ethan had been. Because she's a woman and she's seen as better than men, the Dimitrescus do listen to Mia's pleas and attempts to reason, but ultimately, she is chained to a wall and locked up. And now she must find a way to escape the room she's in. There would still be puzzles and such within, and for the most part, Mia is not in any immediate danger as she wanders the castle. She might hear things move behind her, only for there to be quiet giggling from one of the sisters and bugs buzzing away, and she would definitely see blood, insides, and body parts scattered around. But the girls don't outright do anything aggressive to her at first. Bela may silently watch her from afar, breathlessly laughing when she's eventually spotted. Cassandra may pop out of nowhere to scare Mia and cackle as pointless bullets are shot at her. Daniela may be a mix of them, and definitely flirts to make her feel more uneasy after seeing all the death. After all, Mia is a woman, and the Dimitrescus are under orders from Miranda to leave her alone, at least for the moment. Think of it this way. If Mia does kill the Dimitrescus, Miranda will have more bodies for the Megamycete and the ritual. If they kill Mia, the only bad part is that Miranda will then have to kill the Dimitrescus herself. I feel she may be an instigator in a way. She might have implanted the idea that they knew where Rose was or had her at the castle, which would make Mia more hostile toward the Dimitrescus, and in turn, have them actually attack her, as she would throw the first punch. But the Dimitrescus don't outright attack or try to kill her until the Fly Trio chases Mia through the castle and into the cellar from the drop point we see in game. While she coughs and struggles to regain her composure after falling so far, Mia can hear a faint argument from above, with things clearly being thrown before it quiets down. While moving toward and crawling through the little tunnel that leads to the wine room, Mia can hear bugs buzzing angrily and Bela complaining that Cassandra let their prey get away. She's then instructed by Lady Dimitrescu to hunt Mia down and bring her back to the original room she was in. From there, the cellar sequence is relatively the same, save for the fight in the kitchens. You can have your own opinions on this, but I thought it was the dumbest thing to have the daughters die so easily. I'm only mentioning this because I've seen it before in my comment sections, but everyone dying because Ethan was just better or stronger than they were is a blatantly wrong statement and makes no sense with the lore. Like with the daughters, they know their weaknesses, they know what they're capable of, and it made no sense for them to literally trap themselves in those positions, except for Daniela, who had no real choice. Sort of. If I had any say in it, I would have made the daughters enemies. You can be rid of for a short time, but that you cannot kill. It's a good thing. This entire video is my own make-believe fantasy land, and I can put these things into the game I would have made. Like the scene with Bela in the kitchens. Instead of it being a boss fight that's easily won, she hesitates and tries to get away, and you're unable to follow her for long. If you do, and you anger her enough by shooting her or attacking her, she'll go absolutely feral on you until you're dead. Worse than what we see in game. Using the cold against the daughters is good and gets them to retreat for a short time, so you can do your thing. And you can have little safe rooms by shooting certain windows open. They won't enter any room with a broken window, same as in game. The phone scene would still happen, but all of her daughters are still alive, if a little shaken. Bela and Cassandra now stand with her in the dressing room as it's revealed Miranda doesn't care about how dangerous Mia actually is, and it's implied she wants her alive. But Lady Dimitrescu doesn't see the point in it. Doesn't she care that this outsider is now in her home, attacking her daughters and trying to kill them? Spoiler alert. She doesn't. If you look at Lady Dimitrescu long enough during the scene and look back at her daughters standing nearby, you'll see both of them staring right at Mia before quickly looking away, despite there being no indication that they knew Mia was outside. Bela and Cassandra are given instructions to deal with Mia by being rid of her however they see fit, and probably mentions going to see Daniela. This is where she's locked up in the library, and while there would be the option of unlocking it and getting inside, it wouldn't be necessary to move the plot forward. Not entering would leave Mia to hear Lady Dimitrescu softly speaking with Daniela about what's happening and why she needs to remain inside, of course, with her youngest whining and complaining about being able to hunt with her sisters. Lady Dimitrescu now patrols the Opera Hall area and just outside of it, rather than the entire castle, sometimes being heard inside the library and singing softly to Daniela. Bela and Cassandra can be found hunting inside the main area of the castle, and they now do not hold back, but they can't be killed. They're smarter and stronger, so the only thing to do is run. I don't know if I would give Lady Dimitrescu a mutated form in this scenario, only because she does so during a time of grieving and after being stabbed. But I think I would have her be the one to chase Mia out of the castle, with her daughters somewhere behind her. There would probably be another area she gets chased through that ends up breaking and sending her to the ground floor, and from there, she can continue through the village while Lady Dimitrescu resides in the castle with all her daughters. I do think Lady Dimitrescu would have a bit of sympathy for Mia, considering they're both mothers trying to protect their children, and while I hadn't mentioned it before, Mia's main goal here would be to get the next part of Rose's flasks after being shown it was in the castle somewhere. After retrieving it, she gets chased out, and she's sent back the village. I know the flasks were important for the ritual and all. I just forgot to mention them earlier. Whoops. All the villagers are now gone, killed either by the Lycans or Miranda herself, and Mia must progress to the last lord alone. I think Heisenberg would still try to get Mia work with him and use Rose, but obviously declines. And I know a lot of people wanted to team up with Heisenberg, but it wouldn't make sense to. He's still a villain, and we don't know what would have happened after using Rose to defeat Miranda. It's most likely that he would have killed the protagonist after and used Rose for his own gain, tragically becoming the very person he sought to destroy. I see where you're coming from with that idea though. I just couldn't imagine agreeing to use my own kid as a bioweapon to destroy someone else's mom, especially without knowing what would happen to said child after. So, Mia fights her way through the factory. And honestly, I don't think I'd change much about this, either, other than making it darker and making the enemies a little quieter. Imagine barely being able to hear metal screeching or whirring, and you can only see a faint red light at the end of the hallway you're in. Freaky. I think having Heisenberg make occasional checks on Mia throughout the factory would have been interesting, which would show that he's definitely watching her every move, similarly to how he did in the game. I probably would have made him show up in a room she had never been in before, only to use metal pieces to block any shots at him and disappear through another door, now barred shut. It would also lead the player a certain way and help with the labyrinthian factory. Through her trial in the factory, Mia probably breaks down a few times. Within such a short span of time, she's been through so much and has lost just about everything. She has no idea where she even is. She doesn't know if Ethan has noticed she's been gone this long or if he's searching for her somewhere. She doesn't know if Rose is still alive, and she doesn't know if she will make it out of this alive. But isn't it the right thing to do, as a parent? Is she not doing as she's meant to? The final battle with Heisenberg happens much differently compared to the one we received in game, mostly because Chris and his squad aren't in it. Mia is probably sent over a ledge and falls into a pit of water deep below the factory, struggling to resurface, and as she heaves and nearly throws up, Heisenberg appears with his medal to have his little monologue. He tells her once more that joining him and using Rose will be best for both of them. It'll ensure they both make it out alive, and that ignoring him won't get her anywhere. Not when she's in his territory. She angrily denies his attempt at a deal and tries to shoot him once more, but he's had enough at this point. He probably uses his medal to distract her and take what flasks she has, but she's had enough of this cultish bullshit and wants it to end. Heisenberg's battle isn't won with his mutation. Instead, he remains in his human form, using metal to get away and deflect bullet shots, and Mia is forced to follow him up with an elevator and continue the battle from there. Eventually, they're forced to take their little battle outside, and after only a few moments, this is probably where Miranda steps in. It's raining or snowing, and things are on fire from the lichens and any survivor's attempts to distract the beasts. And now, when Mia collapses on the ground from exhaustion and a metal pipe lodged in her side, Miranda decides to make her entrance. I'm sure you've noticed, but throughout my version of the game, I would have made Miranda have more screen time and more appearances. It made no sense for her to be the main villain and have, what, maybe 10 minutes to be a villain? At this point, Miranda would probably use mold to get Mia up and out of the way, disposing of Heisenberg as the former runs and staggers as she does so. She ends up in an open field, similar to the one we saw in game, and this is where the confrontation happens. I'd keep it relatively the same, but now, Mia knows Miranda is dangerous and is well aware of what she actually is. She's no longer an introverted, rude scientist. She's a cult leader, and she took me as child for some unknown reason. This would be where Miranda reveals who she truly is and why she's been doing all of this. It's for her daughter, Ava, her child that was lost to her over a century ago, someone she has finally discovered a way of reviving. Mia, of course, tries to reason with her, despite the horror she would feel at knowing she was lied to this horribly. I feel that Miranda would be a little awkwardly flirty during this scene, and overly nice sometimes, so much so that it's made clear she's mocking Mia. Could she be mocking the old feelings that were between them? Perhaps. Doing so only makes Mia angrier, and the realization that Miranda was behind everything infuriates her. She tries to shoot her, tries to knife her, tries anything to get just a little bit of revenge for everything she's been through since her work with Evelyn. Everything she's been roped into, the Baker incident, what happened to Ethan, what he is and what Rose is. And during her blind anger, Miranda gets the drop on her. She disappears once more in a flock of crows, cackling, and reforms just in time to pierce her chest and remove her heart, albeit with what looks like regret for a mere second. Mia struggles and stumbles back, unable to take in any air, her vision blurring, and Miranda simply watches. She seems to steel herself and regain her composure as Mia falls to the ground, bleeding from a gaping wound in her chest. She blinks once, twice, and the third time, her eyes do not reopen. A similar scene with Evelyn occurs, and it's revealed that Mia was never actually cured of the mold in her body. It's why Miranda wanted Rose in the first place. She was born from two parents infected with or made of mold, and her abilities would be what she needed to complete the ritual. Of course, with the mold comes regeneration, something you would probably know of fondly if you've ever read anything I write. I would use that here to heal the wound in Mia's chest, and because she's still kind of undead, or just not fully alive, she could function without her heart for a short time. Evelyn probably tells her this, and she says it with more fondness, considering this is Mia she's speaking to. I would change the final battle with Miranda a bit. It would be more intense, and her mutated form would be different, more like what we saw in concept art. But that's about it, I think. There would still be the mocking comments and the desperation in Miranda's voice, the attempts at having Mia understand what it's like to lose a child, and the latter angrily explaining that she knows exactly what it's like. It would end with Miranda dying, crying out for her child, and with Mia struggling to do anything. I can see it ending one of two ways. Either someone was alerted to what was going on and comes to help Mia and she's nearly dying, or she makes it out with Rose without destroying the megamycete. The latter choice would have consequences, of course, but it would leave room for a DLC in which Miranda is actively trying to escape the megamycete and become a physical threat once again. I'm not entirely sure how the canon megamycete works, and I don't even know if Capcom has figured that out, but we'll go with that. It would leave the village in shambles with mold and dead bodies everywhere, and anything that survived wouldn't live much longer. Considering it doesn't seem like much can actually leave the village. I'm not great with endings, in the event you couldn't tell, but that's about it, I think. Again, I didn't hate the original story Village portrayed, but I do feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities and plot holes that could have been easily fixed. I'm sure my own version has its holes and some things that need elaborated on, but I'm not being paid to do this, so, I might go back and fill in some things or add stuff in places. But as for right now, that's how I would have written Village, given the chance. I hope you enjoyed watching or reading this, and I do apologize for it being this long. Oops. I hope you're all staying safe and happy during these trying times. Remember to eat lots of food, drink lots of water, and thank you so much for watching.